Okay, we're going to do a blocking of this still life with rhododendrons, and we are going to go over the palette briefly. We have white in the foreground there, titanium white. This is yellow ochre, burnt sienna, cadmium red, or if you don't have cadmium red, you could use cadmium red light or medium, either way. Cadmium yellow, sap green, permanent green. This is chromium oxide green, and right next to it is viridian green, very dark metallic green. That's ultramarine blue and burnt umber. Now let's get into the painting. Now it's going to be more than a wash here. Actually, it's a block in. And here what I'm doing is I'm just adding the first layer. You can tell that it's semi-transparent because you can see the yellow. I think that actually this was burnt sienna. I believe this canvas was probably destined for a landscape painting, which I usually tone those with like a burnt sienna, just something a little bit more red, just to offset green if I'm painting outside in a floral or trees. All right, so what I'm trying to do here now is establish, if we refer back to the photograph, you'll see that there's going to be a gradation. This situation in the still life setup was actually on a shelf in a library, and so the flowers were on one level or rung, and then just above there was another rung which was causing a bit of a shadow, which was kind of nice. It sort of broke up the background a little bit by having some depth, and that's what I'm trying to do here. Keep referring back to the photo, if you will. You'll see that it does get very dark here. When we're setting up a still life, keep in mind how close that the still life is, the prop, okay? So let's say in this situation, yeah, we have a full flower arrangement, and that's quite close to the wall. If it was a little further out, we would probably see a little bit more gradation and less of this darker shadow here. So what I'm trying to do now is I'm just trying to really emphasize the colors that are happening. The bowl, if you look at the photograph, is kind of like creating a prismatic effect. The light is emanating through and then reflecting or projecting onto the white wall in the back. Now you might think that, whoa, that wall doesn't look anything like white. Well, it doesn't, because we're dealing with the shadow area right now. And as we get into the painting of the leaves, which will probably end this video, and I'll work on another one when we get into the flowers and the other colors. I like working, doing all the greens first and then all the reds. As long as my values are good, I can work in this kind of piecemeal method, and at the end it'll all come together. Now here you see I'm working on just trying to blend the colors together. I'm using a palette knife because I didn't quite like the color I put in. I was actually scraping some of that color off. So that's a technique. If you put a color down, and I know this is supposed to be like a lighter semi-opaque block in, which it is, but to get some of those color effects, you do have to pump up the color. So that would mean more volume of pigment, okay? Which is fine as long as you're not creating these heavy surface textures. Unless you like that look, that's fine. I like to keep my painting, my first wash or block in, I like to keep it a little bit more on the thin side. It follows that fat over lean rule, which means you want to put the heavier paint on top of a lean, which means a thinner underpainting. So that's what I'm doing here. I apologize. I cut off the picture on the bottom here. But you'll actually see it again in the next video, I think. Or I'll just put a copy of this thing down at that stage. I think I still have a photograph of it. Here I'm just trying to get, the symmetry. I want to make sure that that line is relatively straight across. I want to try to keep a sense of, not that it's perfection, but that is a strong horizontal. So I want to make sure that I keep it in that vein. Okay. Now I'm not making a hard line. In fact, you can see I went over it again and softened it. And I think I do the same thing on the left side. So be careful with the edges. In the shadows, we can get a little lighter there. So don't think that you have to paint everything in this hard-edged. In fact, you don't want to do anything like that. You want to try to, even if you go over a line and it looks really awful, but it blends, just leave it, because unless it's like black over white or something that contrasted. If it's not, don't worry about the shapes, because you're always going to come back in and refine those shapes. So here I am. That little lag time there was because I was mixing some colors. So here what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to look at my reference, and I'm trying to create some interest, color interest, right? I don't want it just to be one color. I want those colors to break a little bit. So here what I'm doing is I'm adding a little bit of a blue, which was on the palette. Most likely it was the ultramarine blue. Okay, might not look like that here because there could have been just a tiny bit of the Viridian green also mixed in with this. So that's why it has that greenish tinge, but yet it's on the cool side. So yeah, so here I'm just really trying to mass in as much as that background as possible. Now I'm also concerned about that gradient. So there's going to be, I'm actually going to get a little darker on the top, again, because I have to try to get that feeling that there is another rung or another shelf just above. Okay, what that's also going to do to the painting, it's going to help. It's going to help the painting have a feeling of depth. It's also going to frame the picture. So by having that darker band just on the top, which would really in reality be the cast shadow of the top shelf, it kind of forces you to look down again into the picture, right? So these are the things that we look for. I think that's what I really loved when I saw this this scene. I think I was just having my lunch, and we have at the atelier we have a cafe and a table, and it was around 6 o'clock, and I saw the light just coming through, and it just looked so beautiful. And sometimes that's what happens. That's what inspires us, right? It's how the light is affecting something. So I had my cell phone, and I took this shot. I wish I had a better camera. I didn't, but I'm happy with the results. Sometimes if the print is too detailed and good, we have a tendency to over render and over detail. So in a way, it's good that it was a little bit on the grainy side or not as sharp. So I think we're going to be transitioning. Here we go. We're transitioning into the greens now, and you're going to see how just by the addition of the green, okay, when we get to the end of just blocking in the green shapes, that you're going to see how well they work with the background tones, right? So on this one, I left the photograph in so you guys can see what I'm doing. So this way, it's almost like you're seeing that little inset picture, and perhaps I can do that with the other one too, actually, and maybe we can get that in the picture as well. But on part 2, okay. Here, I just really want to get you guys to see, and I'll take a still of this too at the end and show it to you as well. So you'll see that at the end of the video. Right now, I'm just really trying to mass in big shapes. That's all. I'm not really concerned about specific shapes in the video. I'm sorry, in the painting. Um, I'm really just looking for masses. All right. What I'm using to move the paint around is just simply terpenoid and a little bit of refined linseed oil. That's all I'm using. I'm not using liquid because I know I probably won't be painting this again probably for another few days. So it's going to dry naturally. However, if I was going to paint this tomorrow and I wanted to guarantee that this would be dry, I would be using liquid. Okay, straight liquid. I wouldn't even touch solvent or linseed oil. Linseed oil can actually slow down uh, the the drying time. So I want to speed up the drying time. All right, so now I'm seeing some of those shapes in the back that I'm just kind of massing in the general positioning of them. Remember too, I'll be going over the background. We have to still keep in mind that that background is still the underpainting. So the next coat, this has to be dry. I'll be going over that again, and I'll probably just be refining some things here and there, but it won't be like a completely over painting. It'll probably just be a little bit more textural. I'll try to mix the same colors that I had in there before. Some painters would just leave it at this stage because it's really just a background, but I'm just going to refine it just a little bit, right? And when we get to that video, you'll see that progression too, and how we get those subtleties in the painting. Now that has to be done before I come back in and paint the rest of these flowers and leaves. There's probably more leaves than there are flowers in this picture. I'm sure it looks like it was, some of those flowers look like they were, they saw better days. A lot of them fell down. That's another reason why I kind of like the painting too, because it had some of these, dried up flowers on the bottom, and they kind of picked up a little bit of color too. So there was that about the picture that, or the scene that struck me. Yeah, still just massing in more of the green, and just try. And the next video, we're going to get into the colors. I want to try. I think I have some magenta somewhere in one of my paint boxes. I'm hoping. If not, we'll use alizarin crimson. I think we'll be able to achieve that color intensity. You'll be surprised how a lot of these colors are kind of muted, so we may not have to rely so much on the intensity of the colors. Plus, we can also do some interesting things with pushing up the values, so we can glaze over some parts of the picture to really push those intense colors. Like for instance, in the if we look in the red section on the right side of the painting, you'll see that there is a definitive, almost crimson color, but it's okay in the dark, it's recessed. But when we look at the colors that are reaching out to the light, they're really intense. So we have to be careful of that. And we have to try to do something where we may have to paint those colors a little brighter so that we can glaze over. And I'll try to do that in this video. If it's not here, it'll be in whatever, probably part 4 when we get to that point. The camera is a little on the tilt, so that's why we're not seeing this straight on. But for the most part, we have a lot. Now I do paint because I'm kind of like in the green mode right now. I paint the vase that it's in, and I try to get the colors. I think I got them as close as I could. I may have to glaze that too. Who knows? But right now, I'm happy with the color. Not as vibrant as I'd like I've liked it to be, but it definitely works. I think that was some sort of phthalo green in there, which is a crazy color. I don't know if I have it. Again, I'll have to look in my boxes. I have a ton of paint all over the place, and I may have an old tube of that stuff. Unfortunately, I can't run to the art store because we are in quarantine, and I'm not going to order it online just for this painting. But I think I could do without. I think alizarin crimson will give me that intensity, especially in the pinks. As far as those deep red colors on the right side, I don't know. We'll see what happens there. But it's going to be a challenge. We'll see. Now, I'm not, you see the paint, the top, there seems to be like a flatness there. I didn't want to paint that. That looks kind of weird. So I'm breaking it up with some shapes, just some leaf shapes, just to kind of keep it moving and giving it that energy. All right, I don't know how far I am along here. I think I'm mixing up some colors. Most likely 4, yeah, there it is. Now, there you go. All right, so what I just did there was I took my brush and I put it right up against the photograph, right? That's how you find color, right? So you have to match. You have to match what you see in a photograph or what you see in nature. Now, this painting, if I was to do this painting, obviously you couldn't have enough time to do a wash-in. This painting would probably be done alla prima, and basically what I'm doing here, but I would take time just to get some of the colors a little bit more exacting. Okay, ran out of time. Here is the blocking of the vase. Stay tuned for part 2.